They said the playground belonged to the community. I said the land belonged to me. And when the county maps proved I was right. The HOA president turned pale, like she'd seen a ghost. The first light of dawn spilled across the hills behind my house, the kind of soft gold that makes the world look peaceful, even if it isn't. I walked out onto my porch, coffee steaming in my hand, expecting birds, quiet, and maybe the sound of my old wind chimes. But that morning, I heard something else. Children laughing. Swings creaking. A slide slamming against metal. At first, I thought it was coming from the park down the road. But the voices were too close, way too close. I stepped off my porch and froze in disbelief. Right there, where my vegetable garden used to be, stood a brand new playground. Bright yellow slides, a shiny swing set, a tiny climbing wall, and a blue sign that read, HOA Community Kid Zone, Members Only. Members Only. On my property. A man wearing an HOA safety vest walked past me holding a clipboard, barely glancing at me as he said, "Morning. Make sure you keep clear of the play area. Liability rules. Liability. On my land." I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just stared at the swings slicing through my air, parents chatting under my trees, kids running across my soil, the same soil I worked for years, the same land my father left me before he passed. There was a time when this property was nothing but wild grass and broken fences. My father used to say, "Son, people might forget who built things, but the land remembers." Now strangers were planting their feet all over it. I walked around the playground, my boots leaving prints in the soft dirt. The HOA had fenced the area with wooden posts, poured gravel flooring, even installed benches. This wasn't built overnight. They had planned it. Approved it. Celebrated it. All without a word to me. When I got to the far corner of the fence, I saw something that made my jaw tighten. A ribbon-cutting photo taped to the fence, showing the HOA board smiling, scissors in hand, and right behind them, my barn visible in the background. They didn't just use my land, they bragged about it. The HOA president, Karen Whitlock, stood front and center in the photo. Of course she did. The same woman who once fined me because my grass grew too tall after my mom's surgery. The same woman who said I was lowering the neighborhood's beauty standards. Now she was using my property for her legacy project. I walked back toward my porch, each step slower than the last, until something new caught my attention, a document pinned to my gate. The ink was fresh, taped neatly like a trophy. HOA notice. As voted by majority, parcel space behind Lot 14 is now designated for community recreational use. No unauthorized interference allowed. Violations subject to fines up to $750 per incident. I read it twice, then a third time. They weren't just trespassing. They were claiming authority over me. For a few minutes, anger threatened to choke me. But then something else took its place, something calmer, heavier, sharper. My father's voice again. Land fights are never loud, son. The quiet ones win. I went inside, opened a dusty cabinet, and pulled out a leather folder that hadn't seen daylight in 8 years, the complete deed and boundary maps of my property. I placed them on the table, smoothed the paper, and let the truth settle. The playground wasn't near my land. It wasn't bordering my land. It was 43 feet inside my property line. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Not fight. Not scream. Not tear down the playground. No. I was going to start charging rent. I didn't waste a minute. While the early hours still clung to silence, I called the only person I knew who could settle boundary disputes without a single raised voice, Ethan Hale, a county surveyor and an old friend of my father's. Ethan wasn't just good with land maps, he treated property lines the way surgeons treat arteries. Precise. Non-negotiable. He arrived before noon, steel case in hand, GPS tools over his shoulder. When he saw the playground, he let out a low whistle. They built all this without checking the parcel registry. That's going to hurt. Not me. Them. Parents kept watching us, confused. To them, I must have looked like some disgruntled neighbor trying to ruin their morning. If only they knew, this land was mine long before the HOA ever printed their first rulebook. Ethan placed stakes and recorded coordinates while I walked with him quietly, the weight of every wooden post and every bolt in that playground sinking deeper into my resolve. After 45 minutes, he stopped, checked his tablet, and turned to me. They're deep on your land, about 43 feet inward, give or take a few inches. If they put another swing set, they'll hit the center of your irrigation system underground. I exhaled, slow, steady. Proof. Cold and final. Before Ethan left, he put a hand on my shoulder. Your father would have handled this smart. Don't let anger spend what patience can earn. I nodded. I wasn't going to uproot the playground. Let the kids play. Let the slide shine. But the adults? They were going to learn the cost of ignoring a landowner. At 6 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message from a neighbor. HOA urgent, emergency meeting tonight. Topic, playground dispute. Not trespassing. Not illegal construction. Just dispute. I showed up at the community hall, a plain white building with a bulletin board announcing things no one ever actually cared about, bake sales, garage permits, seasonal flower guidelines. But tonight, the parking lot was full. Parents were angry, board members whispering, and the president, Karen Whitlock, stood at the front with a folder so thick it looked like it contained laws of a small country. She spotted me and lifted her chin like a queen acknowledging a peasant. The meeting began. Karen tapped the microphone. We've received a complaint that the community playground is partially on private land. We believe this is a misunderstanding and want to resolve it peacefully. I waited. Let them talk. Let them dig the hole deeper. Another board member chimed in. The neighborhood voted in favor of the playground. We followed procedure. The land was empty and unused. Unused. That word hit me harder than the notice on my gate. My father planted tomatoes there for 20 years. My mother grew lavender that scented every summer. I learned to walk on that soil. Unused? Only to people who see land as decoration rather than legacy. When they finally asked if I had something to say, I kept it short. I pulled out copies of the official survey and placed them on the table. Your playground isn't partially on my land. It's almost entirely on my land. And starting next month, you will receive a rental invoice. The room erupted. Some people gasped, others raised their voices. A parent shouted, "You can't charge us for a park." I answered calmly. You built a business on property that belongs to someone else. That's not a park. That's a lease. Karen stood, face tight, voice trembling beneath her forced composure. You can't possibly be serious. We will not pay you anything. I looked her straight in the eyes. That's fine. The county will calculate back rent, and the court will handle what comes after. Her confidence faltered, just for a moment, and I saw it, the fear. The realization. The next morning, before anyone had time to organize their outrage, the HOA board received an envelope from my attorney. A simple, devastating sentence sat at the top. Notice of land use compensation requirement. They had 14 days to agree on rental payments or face legal action, including damages for unauthorized construction and use. The board thought I would back down. They thought I would negotiate. They thought I cared about fitting in. No. I cared about what was mine. And I had just begun. No battle begins with gunfire. Some begin with paperwork. 3 days after the attorney letter was delivered, I received my own envelope, stamped with the HOA seal like a warning brand. Inside was a notice full of threats disguised as regulations. Violation 1, Unauthorized obstruction of common property access. Violation 2, Interference with HOA community assets. Violation 3, Disorderly conduct toward HOA representatives. Total fine, $1,750 due within 10 days. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. When powerful people get caught, they don't apologize, they retaliate. They wanted me to kneel. I wasn't even planning on sitting down. Instead, I sent a response through my attorney stating the obvious. I cannot obstruct what I own. The HOA cannot fine someone for protecting their legally documented property. And that's when things began to shift. The HOA's biggest mistake wasn't disrespect. It wasn't trespassing. It was construction, uninsured construction. See, a playground is not just wood and bolts. It is liability, which meant every swing, every slide, every inch of gravel was a potential insurance nightmare. And because it sat on my land, it meant I had grounds to file a claim for. Unapproved commercial use increased risk placed on my property. Damages to removed soil and garden structures. So I did. The insurance adjuster arrived on a breezy afternoon and inspected everything with a camera, tape measure, and a face that slowly hardened as he calculated numbers in his head. Parents watched uneasily from the benches, sensing a storm they didn't understand. Before the adjuster left, he turned to me and said quietly, "They shouldn't have built this here. Someone is going to pay a lot of money. Not me. Not the children. The HOA." 2 evenings later, a soft knock echoed across my front porch. A woman stood there, dark circles under her eyes, arms crossed nervously. Her name was Melissa Turner, mother of a boy who loved the blue slide more than anything in that playground. I had seen him earlier, running up and down the climbing wall with a laugh so genuine it could melt steel. Melissa's voice shook. "Look. I don't agree with the HOA. I didn't know this was your land. And I'm sorry for what they did. I just want my kid to have a safe place to play. Not a lawsuit." For the first time since this started, I felt the anger loosen, just slightly. I told her the truth. I'm not taking the playground away. I'm just not letting them steal from my family. She nodded slowly, relief mixing with guilt. "They said you want to shut it down." I shook my head. "No. I want the people responsible to pay, not the kids." When she walked away, I saw it, something cracks open when truth finally reaches a neighbor. And cracks can become fractures. Fractures can become collapse. The HOA was losing support. On the 7th day, the HOA received what they never expected. Monthly land use rental fee, $3,200. Late fee upon failure to pay, 12%. Due in 14 days. Attached was a map marking every inch of my property beneath their playground, signed, stamped, and verified by the county surveyor. At the bottom of the invoice, just one sentence. Cost of ignoring a landowner, measured monthly. Neighbors gathered around their mailboxes that afternoon, whispering like it was breaking news, which it was. That evening, Karen emailed the entire community. "We will not be paying this outrageous demand. The HOA will pursue legal action." She thought she still held power. She thought the title, HOA President, meant she owned the air we breathed. She didn't know what was coming next. Because the county clerk had just confirmed a review of the playground's permit. And there was no permit. If silence had weight, the neighborhood would have collapsed under it. 2 days after the first invoice went out, the county permit office emailed both me and the HOA board with a confirmation that changed everything. No construction permit was ever filed for the playground. No environmental impact check was performed. No authorization for recreational structure was recorded. In the eyes of the county, it wasn't a playground. It was an illegal structure. And that meant fines, heavy fines, were no longer aimed at me. They were aimed at the HOA itself. The county sent an inspector the next morning. He arrived in a beige truck, clipboard in one hand, camera in the other. The same parents who once watched me with suspicion now watched him with fear. Kids were pulled away from swings, conversations hushed, like the air itself had turned dangerous. I stayed back. I didn't need to stand over anything. The truth stands on its own legs. The inspector photographed bolts, supports, the gravel ground, and then the small creek running behind the playground, an area that had once been part of my irrigation route. That discovery made him stop. He turned to me. This runoff wasn't approved. The HOA is responsible for potential water contamination. He didn't say it with anger or pity, just certainty. Karen was pacing near a bench, whispering frantically into her phone. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced with a look I had never seen on her face before, doubt. That evening, another HOA meeting was held. The room wasn't full this time. The board sat at the front, but chairs that were once occupied were now empty. People had chosen distance over loyalty. A board member, Greg Patterson, slammed his hand on the table. "Karen, you told us you handled permits. We trusted you." Her voice cracked. I thought it wasn't needed. We voted." Greg cut her off. "Voting doesn't replace the law." It was the first time I saw Karen shrink. I stood when they allowed me to speak. "I told you before, I don't want the playground destroyed. I want my land respected. You had a chance to work with me." Someone in the back muttered, "He's right." Another parent added, "We could have avoided all of this." Karen glared at them, then at me, like I had stolen something she believed was hers. But land has no sympathy for entitlement. The next morning, Karen marched straight onto my property as if authority were a shield. I was repairing a fence post when she approached. "This is out of control," she snapped. "You have no idea what you're doing. The HOA will not pay you a single dollar." I set my tools aside, wiped my hands, and looked at her calmly. "Then the playground closes. The county will remove it, and your legal fees will triple what rent would have cost." She stepped closer, voice trembling with anger. "You're doing this out of spite." I shook my head. "No. I'm doing this because you decided that what belonged to me belonged to you." For a moment, she couldn't speak. Her face fell, not in defeat, but in realization. The kind that burns before it cools. Then her voice lowered, almost pleading, almost human. "You could have come to us first." I answered without hesitation. "You had ribbon-cutting scissors on my land before you had a conversation." She flinched. She turned and walked away, her steps uneven, her world cracking under a weight she could no longer deny. By nightfall, 2 board members resigned. Greg sent a message to the entire community. The board was misled. "We will seek cooperation with the landowner." People began leaving the HOA group chat. Support drained like water through broken soil. And somewhere in that fallout, the truth finally settled where it always belonged. This wasn't a neighborhood dispute. It was a lesson. One Karen never expected to learn. But she wasn't done fighting yet. Because tomorrow, she would bring a lawyer. And I would bring something stronger. The morning they returned, the sky was a flat, dull gray, the kind that hides the sun but not the truth. I saw them from my porch, Karen, 2 remaining HOA board members, and a lawyer in a charcoal suit stepping across the grass that was no longer just my land, but also the stage of their undoing. The lawyer carried a briefcase with the posture of a man who expected to win, unaware he had walked onto a battlefield already lost. Karen looked different, not in clothes or hair, but in the part of someone that breaks before it bends. The kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting reality itself. They approached the table I had set outside, the document folder waiting on it like a verdict. The lawyer began. Our position is that this is shared recreational property and therefore. I slid a set of papers toward him. Survey records. County confirmation. Permit violation reports. Insurance estimates. All official. All irrefutable. He read. Slowly at first. Then faster. His jaw tightened. This could cost the HOA well over $140,000. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Karen's voice was barely audible. What do you want? I took a breath, not of triumph, but of principle, because this moment wasn't about money. It was about respect long overdue. I want a lease agreement. A fair rental fee. And a clause that ensures you never build so much as a mailbox on my land without written permission. The lawyer looked at Karen. She closed her eyes, and I saw it, the exact second she accepted that she had been wrong. The papers were simple. HOA land use agreement. Rental fee, $3,200 per month. Term, 24 months minimum. Late fee, 12%. Landowner retains all property rights. Failure to pay results in immediate closure and full legal pursuit. No drama. Just terms. The world runs on terms. Karen's hand shook as she signed. When the ink dried, the playground was still theirs to use, but no longer theirs to claim. For the first time since the ribbon-cutting photo, I could breathe. 7 days later, I opened my mailbox. A white envelope with the HOA emblem sat inside. Inside it was a check. $3,200. Payment in full. For a moment, I didn't smile. I just looked at it, because this wasn't just money. It was acknowledgement. It was history corrected. It was every seed my father planted being defended long after he was gone. I walked to the playground as children played, parents talking with less tension in their shoulders. Melissa, the mother who had apologized, waved. We're glad it worked out. Truly. I nodded. And I meant it. Let the kids play. Let laughter stay. Let the land be honored while it is shared. Days later, Karen knocked on my door. She stood there holding something. A framed picture. The ribbon-cutting photo, only now, something was different. She had crossed out the words. HOA Community Kid Zone. And written instead. Grayson Family Playfield, with permission. She swallowed hard. I should have asked. I forgot land has stories before rules. I'm sorry. I accepted the frame quietly. Not because she deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. Karen, I said gently, power isn't owning a neighborhood. It's knowing when something never belonged to you. And she nodded, not as a president, but as a neighbor. Some people think a fence is just wood. Some people think land is just dirt. But those who inherit it, those who work it, protect it, and remember every footprint on it, they know better. My father once told me, the land doesn't shout to prove itself. It just waits, and eventually, someone listens. The HOA listened. A little too late. But just in time. Because respect, like rent, comes monthly.